Hello, I'm Kamal Santamaria. This is Counting the Cost on Al Jazeera, your weekly look at the world of business and economics. This week, Nigeria. Will Goodluck Jonathan become the first president to lose an election? With a militant insurgency, currency devaluation and falling oil prices, his prospects don't look good. Also this week, the mother of all trade deals, the European Union and the United States insist it'll create millions of jobs, but many aren't convinced. Is this really a charter for big business to dominate trade and squeeze out small businesses? And as OPEC's Middle East members take their battle for market share to the world, perhaps there's an even more abundant resource to be exploited. So imagine you're the president of Nigeria trying to win re-election, but you've got problems. Boko Haram is a constant and deadly threat in the north. Oil prices are falling, and that's your biggest industry. This could well be an uphill battle. What's interesting, though, is the way Africa's biggest economy has managed to weather the economic storm created by plunging oil prices and currency devaluation. That's probably got a lot to do with the central bank, which took action. It devalued the currency and raised interest rates in November, getting that nasty shock out of the way before the elections. It followed up by not raising interest rates any further and has been burning through its cash reserves as well to prop up the currency. Of course, they can't go on too much longer like this, so interest rates are likely to rise, maybe by about 2 percentage points to deal with inflation. And lower oil prices mean there's less to spend. That could cut the rate of growth to 5% after an average of 7% since 2004. So first up, we need to get a flavour of how that currency devaluation and falling oil prices and rising inflation, all these things, what effect they're having on people. Yvonne Ndege provides us with that with this report from Abuja.
Chinyere Opia is shopping for toiletries in the Nigerian capital, Abuja. The prices have nearly doubled here because of the falling global price of oil. Sellers buy their goods in dollars from abroad, but the local currency, the naira, has lost nearly 10% of its value against the dollar, making the goods more expensive to import. And so sellers have passed the increased costs on to customers.
It's ridiculous because I came to the market today with an intent of spending 7,000, but I ended up spending 9,000 naira. When I was asking the man, most of the things I used to buy for like 1,500 were now 1,800, 1,850, or some even 2,000 naira. So everything they had added money to so many of these commodities.
Nigeria's central bank has reduced the value of the naira because of the falling price of oil. More than 90% of the nation's income comes from exporting oil, and oil has lost nearly 60% of its value over the last 6 months. At stores like these in Abuja, they've been preparing for the increased cost of importing goods.
Bringing in most of the goods from abroad has kind of slowed down. We kind of expected it because of the drop in the price of oil. It's just simple business.
But the situation is a little harsher for consumers who have to buy dollars when they travel abroad. And they're having to spend more in naira to get dollars. Economists say the falling value of the naira is an important lesson.
We should be more responsible. We should save at good times. I mean, if you look at some of the Arab countries, that are also oil rich, they've diversified their economies away from oil.
Nigerians are hoping that the price of oil stabilizes so that the country can regain its income and prices can come down.
But there could be more pressure on the currency just around the corner. The presidential election is being held in just over a week, and there are concerns that if there's any insecurity, that could further weaken the currency. Yvonne Ndege, Al Jazeera, Abuja, Nigeria.
So let's get some analysis now from Abuja. Akpan Hogan Ekpo is the former director of the Nigerian Central Bank. He's also the Director General of the West African Institute for Financial and Economic Management. Pleasure to have you on Counting the Cost this week. Thank you for your time. First of all, what do you think, politically speaking, is the prospect of Goodluck Jonathan coming back to power in this election?
Well, yes, there's challenges. Entire economy is facing challenges, and as the president, the buck stopped on the table. But in terms of what are his chances, the Nigerian people will decide when the time comes.
Tell me about oil prices. I think we have to start with this sort of thing because it is so important to the Nigerian economy. The oil prices are falling. Tell me about the impact it's having and what you expect it will be going forward.
Well, I think the falling oil prices has created a major challenge for the economy because the declining revenues, declining reserves. But it should be a warning signal for the economy or those in charge of the economy to try and diversify the economy away from oil. Because if it continues and is persistent, it will create very serious implications, adverse implications for the economy. Government revenue will decline sharply, and that will lead to inability to pay for some capital projects, and that will also retard growth. But for me, it's once again a signal that it's important to diversify the economy away from oil and look for non-oil sectors to drive the Nigerian economy. But the country is blessed with other resources. Agricultural resources are available. So why do we have to rely so much on oil, on a source of revenue that we have no control over? As you know, we have no control over the price of oil. We have no control over the output. So no serious economy can build a system based on an exogenous source of revenue.
Look, I think everything you're saying there makes perfect sense. Sorry to interrupt you. I think everything you're saying there makes perfect sense. And it's true for a lot of countries, actually, that they can't be that reliant on oil. So why has Nigeria perhaps not diversified already? Do people get, is it they get complacent? You know, when the price is high for so long, they get complacent and they think, oh, the good times are here, we'll be fine. And they don't think about future-proofing.
I think it's the inability of the government, and not just this government in the last 45 years, to have a strategy that will move us away from oil, to use high oil prices to see it as a windfall and use that to develop the economy and not depend on oil. But luckily, there are some signs that the economy is a little, I would say, marginally diversified in terms of the last effort to rebase the GDP, where we saw other sectors like the entertainment industry coming into the picture. Otherwise, one would say that the over-dependence on oil revenue must stop at some point.
So, where should Nigeria go? Because obviously the oil industry is hugely important and it obviously creates not just money, it creates jobs. Nigeria needs more jobs for all these young people coming into the market. Where do you think the employment in the future can come from?
Well, the employment in the future can come from, we're not saying the oil sector is not crucial, because for now it doesn't have even linkages within the economy. If the oil sector is linked to the chemical industry, if it's linked to the pharmaceutical industry, it will create jobs. But more than that, there are other sectors. There's the agri sector that could create millions of jobs. There's modern agriculture. There is the housing sub-market, the mortgage sector that could create a lot of jobs. There's the small-scale enterprises that could create a lot of jobs. So what we should do is to use our foreign reserves to support production, or at least support the import of capital equipments that will produce things domestically. As you know, we are import dependent. 80% of what we use in Nigeria are imported from virtually all the OECD countries. And so once you are import dependent, it becomes a problem. But if you diversify and you manufacture certain things domestically, then you can earn reserves outside of the oil revenue. So there are a lot of sectors. I've mentioned a few of them: housing subsector, agri sector, the small-scale enterprises. All of these have to be encouraged to create jobs, because the real sector in Nigeria is not alive; it's virtually almost dead. And so if you enhance or revamp the real sector, then there will be job opportunities in the long term. In the short and medium term, given the unemployment crisis, in my view, it is the government that can sort it out, because you know unemployment is about 27% and it's rising. And when it gets to that point, you don't depend on the private sector to sort it out in the short and medium term. The government has to be involved, by thinking in a strategic way on ways and means to generate employment in the economy. Then thereafter, the private sector can take over. Because the crisis suggests that the private sector is unable to address the situation because it is overwhelming. If you give the private sector, if you give them some incentives, they might employ a few people, but not large.
Okay, looks like we've got a small technical problem, so we will leave it there. Akpan Hogan Ekpo, the former director of the Nigerian Central Bank, thank you.
Thank you.
And still ahead on Counting the Cost, we're in Thailand, where you might have the perfect business idea, but finding investors can be pretty tough. We'll tell you why a little later on. Right now, though, TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, which basically means the United States and the European Union and their plans to form what would be, in effect, the world's biggest trading bloc. If it comes off, it could create millions of new jobs and increase trade by billions of dollars, much needed stimulus for the global economy. But many are not convinced. They say it's undemocratic and will only increase the power of big business. With a special report for Counting the Cost, here's Lawrence Lee.
The fine countryside of Somerset in Western England might look an unlikely sort of place for an American corporate takeover. But the hills here sit on shale, and that is a fracking company's dream. Fracking for gas has proved less and less viable in England as concerns mount about things like pollution of the water table. But the trade deal, called TTIP, would, these people fear, put power firmly back in the hands of the corporations.
If, for example, a local community and a local planning officer decided that they didn't want to have fracking within their location and they turned down an application, the companies could sue if they thought their profits were going to be damaged.
So little has been reported on the TTIP negotiations that its critics have begun to feel a deliberate cover-up is in train. We went with them from London to Brussels, where the 8th round of negotiations is underway. The view from here is that TTIP is the pinnacle of the neoconservative dream of a world ruled by the marketplace.
They have the right to challenge any law or regulations brought in to protect either people or the environment over the coming years. What it's backed up with is something called the ISDS, the Investor State Dispute Settlement Mechanism, which is basically a very small secretive court staffed by corporate lawyers who will decide guilty or not, and they can impose huge fines on countries.
It sounds like you're saying it makes sovereign governments hostage to the interests of big corporations.
That's exactly what it means. Sovereign governments are absolutely losing power over this, and that power is going to corporate interests.
Once in Brussels, they were given the guided tour. Their hosts have got used to doing this for concerned European citizens. But the reactions are always the same when they point out that there are some 20,000 lobbyists who spend more than €1 billion a year pressing the flesh with politicians in the interests of their employers. And is it these people, these lobbyists, who are selling TTIP?
Well, industry lobbyists were very closely involved in the preparations of the TTIP talks. So when the European Commission started out preparing for the talks with the US, they consulted very closely with industry, whereas they left trade unions and NGOs excluded, more or less not without a voice in the preparations.
Tobacco, agriculture, pharmaceuticals, mining, it's all covered by the secret TTIP talks. And in this closed world of lobbying, the campaigners see an air of menace, of global corporations bending national democracies to their will. Supporters of the European Union very often say that it defends workers' interests and guarantees basic freedoms. Yet this description of the European project says something else completely, that its primary function is to defend the interests of global business. But does it matter if TTIP will allow corporations to take legal action against elected politicians who stand up to them? Are people here really planning the end of European laws guaranteeing workers' rights? Is the unelected European Commission a better arbiter of these things than voters? These questions seem to matter less to TTIP's supporters, who point out eagerly just how much growth there could be from reductions in trade tariffs.
Consumers may see some cheaper prices. So, for example, things like just tariffs on jeans that are imported from the US, maybe some of the electronics that we have, like computers and iPads, etc. Consumers may well see them getting cheaper because these tariffs, these taxes have been removed.
Campaigners had hoped to lobby some members of the European Parliament in Brussels, but only one was prepared to meet them, and she's in the Green Party, which opposes TTIP anyway. And what could she tell us about the negotiations? Nothing, she said, because she's not allowed to.
Well, it absolutely is secret. I mean, I went to the restricted reading room this morning. I was treated like a spy. You know, I had to sign a special declaration so I wouldn't tell anybody what I'd read when I was there. So what's actually being negotiated apparently on our behalf is completely secret. And even things that I'm allowed to see now as a result of huge pressure, I still can't share with you.
All of which left the anti-fracking campaigners from Somerset feeling even more worried than they were to start with.
I believe they do understand the depth of our feeling against it. It's just sad that they can't come out and talk to us about it and explain why they're still going along with something that they know isn't right.
Of all Europe's politicians with any real say over this, the one who has come out against TTIP is the new Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras. He's said he hates it so much he'll use his power to veto it. That could cost European business $100 billion. But if the protesters are right, it could also prevent the entry of a Trojan horse, a trade deal dressed up as good news for consumers, but which underneath is a corporate takeover of European democracy. Lawrence Lee, counting the costs in Brussels.
Now to a battle between big and small business in Thailand. See, 97% of companies in Thailand are small or medium-sized, which looks like a huge success for the free market. But it's only a small handful of powerful business families who control the bulk of industries, which makes it difficult for the little guy to find the money and break through. Scott Heidler reports now from Bangkok.
It's the perfect idea for a startup business. A service that helps young professionals deal with laundry in crowded and bustling cities. It's a high-tech automated locker system where customers drop off their dirty clothes and pick them up clean. Anytime they like, all of it can be tracked online or from a smartphone. That idea was Bon Tayanurox, and it became a reality 2 years ago when he started Washbox 24. There are now over 30 locker locations across Bangkok.
We didn't even know that it's even called startup. It's just something that we're passionate about. It's just something that can really solve problems in life.
But Bond faced his own problems. The lack of facilities and resources to help startup businesses was preventing him from growing his company.
If you compare Thailand to Singapore or Hong Kong, we don't have the luxury. So we kind of help ourselves, do everything ourselves.
Small and medium-sized businesses, according to the government, make up 97% of all Thai companies.
Most small and medium business loans are from commercial banks, more than governmental banks. This is a common practice in every country.
But Thai commercial banks favor traditional business plans, not startup ideas like Washbox 24. When Bond asked them for a loan, they told him no. So he looked abroad, entering and winning startup seed money contests that took him to Finland and Switzerland. A select few families control the vast majority of retail and real estate in Thailand. They are deep-rooted and well-connected. Like this convenience store, it's one of thousands of outlets owned by the Central Retail Company. Everything from small shops all the way up to luxury malls. Because of its market reach, Washbox 24 has recently started working with Central. But some believe these huge companies are part of the reason Thailand's startups are struggling.
The economy is being controlled basically by about 10 families. We need to empower the 65 million people and not just this for 10 families.
So until that happens, most looking to get their startups off the ground will have to look farther than this shrine in Bangkok. A traditional spot for entrepreneurs to come and pray for good business. Most likely, they'll seek their seed money outside the country.
We want to return to oil prices now. Just a quick sort of think out loud about what fluctuating prices do to different countries and different industries. Now, when oil prices are high, economies typically try to switch to alternative energy sources. Just makes sense. But right now, of course, prices are low, which should mean oil becomes more attractive. But it seems even OPEC members are looking beyond black gold this time. There are rising populations, increasing consumerism. It's all leading to more energy consumption as a whole. So let's take one example. Saudi Arabia, not only the biggest OPEC exporter, but a big consumer. Oil accounts for 65% of all electricity production there. But what if Saudi Arabia sold all the oil it produced and consumed other energy sources? Well, could have made an additional $43.8 billion in revenue. And it seems it's thinking about that by outlining plans to spend $109 billion on alternative energy sources, mostly solar. And sun is something we've got a lot of in this part of the world, so let's talk to someone in the business now. Joining us from Washington is Vicente Lopez Ibor Mayor, who is the chairman of Light Source Renewable Energy. He was also previously with the National Energy Commission of Spain. Vicente, I've been reading your article here, which is called "Can Solar Power Replace Oil in the Middle East?" Now, as someone who has lived in the Middle East for about a decade and seen more sun than I ever thought I would, my immediate reaction is yes, of course that makes sense. What conclusions did you come to?
I think solar it's not only a need, but is an opportunity for the Middle East area. It is an opportunity because it combines the possibility to diversify the supply with the fantastic possibilities on the ground that it has the Middle East region, particularly Saudi Arabia and the other 7 neighborhood countries that they have in that area because of the energy expertise that they already have demonstrated for many years, even decades, and also in terms of the gains of productivity and sustainability reinforcement. So I think it's an opportunity, and there the conditions on the ground, it does really exist.
But am I right in saying that solar power has efficiency problems, that you could put, all the solar panels out for as long as you want and they could soak up the sun all day long, but that when you actually convert it into electricity, the returns aren't that great? And maybe that's the reason there hasn't been such a good uptake.
Yeah, well, there is when we talk about solar, of course you are right to some extent, but at the same time when we talk about solar, we have to combine technical questions, economical possibilities, financial capabilities, and of course some regulatory frame. That is very important, this regulatory frame. And in technological terms, there is an opportunity now to make hybridization in solar with the development of much more powerful storage capacities. So these concerns that you have, with the new technical possibilities, I think it could be solved very soon.
Even so, if you have, and I don't know if you'd be able to answer this specifically, but I'll still try. Let's say Saudi Arabia, right? 26 million people, 5 million households. That is a lot of electricity needs, obviously. To make solar power truly workable there, how much of that desert are you going to have to cover up with solar panels to actually get a good return? Is it going to have to be a huge investment?
Yes, it's a huge investment, no doubt. But I think a new economy of the grid, based upon the renewable energy basket, could be perfectly developed in the years to come, in a decade or so. How much it could represent in the whole energy basket, I think it could go from 15 to 13. But look what is happening, for instance, in the European Union. Now we have an objective for the year 2013 in order to have 47% of the production of electricity will be consumed. It would be produced from renewables, and most in particular for wind power plants and solar energy capacity. So I think these possibilities, even apparently are so difficult, it would happen very rapidly because the technological development allows us to do it, because the financial conditions now and capabilities are there. You have it very easily. The possibility even to attract investments from abroad, even if it wouldn't be necessary, and the regulatory frame that you have to establish in a predictability way. You say that, of course, we have to look at the conditions country per country and what is happening in each of these countries, what kind of autonomous energy they have, and I am perfectly aware how powerful is Saudi and Middle East region in oil and fossil fuels combustion energy sources. But this is not a contradiction. Everything could be done, so the basket could be perfectly enlarged with more environmentally sound energy sources in future.
I'm glad you mentioned conditions in each country and contradictions, because as I understand it, your company is the leading solar energy company in the United Kingdom. Now, not to put too fine a point on it, there's not a lot of sun in the UK, is there? I mean, don't you need to be getting out and diversifying? How's your business actually going there?
Yes, there is a lot of sunshine, there is a lot of solar radiation, there is terms of hours of sun per year that allows us to develop very rapidly and to create, just in 5 years' time, the largest company, not only in UK, but the European Union scale. So can you imagine? We have done this because we have combined these chapters that I mentioned to you before, these pillars of technical capabilities with the very good and capable human resources skills, and also the conditions of the market where the prices fell down very rapidly, and a good regulatory frame that is very important always in energy, and in particular in these new energies that needs some learning curve that we have to cover, but it has been covered in a very short period of time. And the conclusion in terms of the objectives, within how much we contribute to the objectives in terms of climate change and in terms of reinforcement of the environmental chapter.
Okay, but I'm going to keep coming back to the conditions again, because don't you as a company need to be moving into the Middle East, into Spain, into North Africa, places where there is a lot more sunshine, quite simply, and you can get better returns on energy and profits?
Yes, why not? We are absolutely open to that possibilities and to explore the possibilities to expand our expertise to other regions that, of course, they have a very large and very competent knowledge about the energy chapter. Of course, yes, but it does depend particularly in this case of the regulatory conditions. It would be a very fruitful cooperation between operators and regulators. Regulators should establish a frame. They should establish this frame with transparency, looking at for opening up competition.
Vicente, it's been a pleasure talking to you today on Counting the Cost. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking with you, sir.
And that's our show for this week, but there's more for you online at aljazeera.com/CTC. That'll take you straight to our page with individual reports, links, and entire episodes to catch up on there. You can also get in touch with us by tweeting either me at Kamal AJE, our business editor at Abid Oliver Ali, and do use our hashtag as well, AJCTC, or drop us an old-fashioned email. countingthecost@aljazeera.net is the address. But that is it for this edition of Counting the Cost. I'm Kamal Santamaria from the whole team. Thanks for joining us. The news on Al Jazeera is next.